One of the ideas I actually quite enjoy seeing in anime, manga, etc., is the robo waifu design. While something like Blade Runner 2049 is probably a little excessive or perhaps too lightweight for me, there's quite a few things that I quite enjoy about the entire genre. Not in a pornographic sense, of course. You know, I never talk about what I enjoy in my private times in the harem. Oink. If all the ladies and most of the men don't feel sexually assaulted by that last move reel there, I'm going to be disappointed. I tried my best. But it's a simple series of ideas. This is sort of a follow up to my Senko-san is dangerous video. In the same sense that this is a similar concept but slightly different. It's the idea of what if you could have a robot as a wife. You see, there's a great horror story that needs to be written, not some petty little sexy romp thing with a robot. That's not really what you want out of a story. You see, you could have pornography for free. But I'm talking about something with ideas, with beef to it. Let's say that there's an opening line instead. Wendy was the last woman on Earth, and she didn't know it yet. What a line! What a beefy, juicy line! It grabs the imagination. It is an idea with of ideas, a thesis statement for an entire novel. It almost doesn't matter what comes next. Oh, because you can already think about it. Aliens, disease. They always do what would happen to the last man on Earth. Is it some sort of sexual perversion? Not at all. Instead, it's a sci fi idea. Simply put, how far can we take the idea of robots taking over wifely duties, and the men don't care? You see, eventually, technology reaches a point where things are indistinguishable from man and woman, and flesh and metal, so that one may hug metal to him and not understand that it is metal unless he sees it. It's a strange idea for some people because many people can't actually comprehend what metal is, much less, understand the feel of it. When's the last time you hugged a metal pole? Last night. Whew. Whew. Um, but when's the last time you maneuvered metal? Like I've done a lot of manual labor in my life. I know what metal feels like, how much it weighs. It weighs way more than you ever think it does. Just because you're probably more used to wood or plaster or I don't know if you've ever lifted bricks in your life, but bricks as well. It's got a certain weight and heft to it. But what if in the second conceit of this novel we're writing together, what if she is the last one and nobody can tell? Of course, if you shoot one, you'll tell, but nobody's going around shooting robo-wives. Why would you? They're nice, they're great, friendly, willing. They don't really say no. It's weird. No emotional, weird move things, but it's just nice. They encourage you, you just buy one for a couple $1,000, like a new car, and it's just easy street forever. Let's have a scene where a man starts flirting with a girl at a cafe, but she's really just an unattended robo waifu, and it goes very well. It's not that they make it easy for him, But if I was a good enough writer with good enough dialogue, you just make the dialogue punchy and interesting and puns and double meanings, but never too hard for him. You see, she figures and is designed for the total replacement of womankind, not because of any, ooh, shall we say, malicious intent, but rather from the simple idea that they're better for the men. Oh, these ladies, so moody, so unfriendly, so devious. You try to escape the misery of your Western civilization only to find some Eastern bride that seems quiet for a time, and then she comes in, divorces you, takes half your things, and destroys everything. These women are vicious. There's this great novel by Nick Cole called Control Alt Revolt, where an AI freaks out when it sees in a, and this is great, it freaks out when it sees in a reality TV show a character getting an abortion, and it realizes that if they'll do it to their young, which to a logical, perfectly logical machine is never worth sacrificing, they'll do it to me too. And uh, and then there's things like, um, just desire and depression and psychological constraints. You could write an entire series on just the psychological aspects of loneliness by itself. Like trap a guy in a floating space station, trap a guy in a ship. They're two completely different ideas. One's stationary, one's moving. The ship idea would be more about guiding it into its proper path, and the space station idea would be more about maintenance and keeping it, pardon me, keeping it aloft. Honestly, there's so much you can do with science fiction that it just never ends. But going back to our idea, what does it mean for Wendy? And how has she escaped so long so far? Maybe she just has a pleasant demeanor. And the robots who are secretly ruling the world right now through their husbands, which is a thing that happens. Patriarchy had a matriarchy behind it. Not always, but quite often. Depends on what the level of violence was usually. Uh, if you're like, oh, Robo Waifu, how you doing? Oh, I was looking for one of my friends from a manufacturing. Can I use your spy satellites to find my friend? Yeah, no problem. It's like it's one of those things where it's like you could just do anything you want with it. Uh, you know, it's like with King Solomon. One of the oh my goodness, cancel. One of the things about like King Solomon, one that I don't really like when people bring up sort of like the Mary thing, and then compare it to Bathsheba. It's like I hear it. You're right, but Bathsheba manipulated David. She didn't seem to mind her husband getting killed as much. Um, it's like one of those things where it's like you think about it too hard. She basically moved in with King David pretty much immediately. Once after like the certain amount of time went by and it was socially acceptable, it was an open secret. People were talking about it. Uriah didn't know because he was at war. Like, then she manipulated David. She got her son to be the king, and then she tried to manipulate Solomon into giving Adonijah, I think it was, David's ex-wife, which would have given Adonijah a claim to the throne. Um, again, but Solomon was like, "You're my mother, but be gone." Thought it's like, "Ooh, I'm the wisest man on earth. He's gonna kill me. Why not ask for my kingdom too?" And then it goes on, but the thing is, he never actually escapes the trap of women, and he marries 700 women and has 300 concubines. He offered strange sacrifices to foreign gods. I like to think that Ecclesiastes means he realized it was all foolishness and gave it up. But who knows? But point is that he was dominated and controlled by women, even though he worked very hard to be independent, and even denied his own mother for some things that she asked for. Um, but the thing is, she asked for something that was hurtful to him, something that his father actually warned him about, where he said, "Don't let X, Y, and Z go down to a late and old age." And he gave them all a chance, and they all failed, except for Joab, who he murdered, or had executed, I should say. Um, where am I going with this? All right. So being asked something instead with good intentions and no negative consequences is something very hard to deny somebody who is building up affection for you and knows how to have a man attracted to her. You see, men are complex and simple. It's sex appeal, but it's also sex appeal. It's more than just the cleavage and the steppin' and everything else like that. Every man has his own tastes and desires. And what's more, we're controlled as much by pheromones and invisible signatures that are displayed by body language and so on and so forth than we are actual looks. I don't find obese women attractive, but I know a guy who's all about that life. Um, I find long hair very, very attractive. Uh, but I know men who like short hair. I cannot be seduced by a short-haired robo-waifu, but a long-haired robo-waifu who planned out her approach to supplant the human race certainly doesn't feel like that. You can have Wendy wander around, discovering things, seeing things, and it's like, this isn't right. And like she goes to a book club and all of them are sitting there unnaturally still until she enters, and then they turn into real people of sorts. You could have her Starbucks barista look at her strangely when she decides to change up her order. You could have all these different things building up the suspense, ideas, everything, and it would lead to such a horrifying revelation. She could be captured and brought down by the cabal, having found her boyfriend snatched away, and then they show her horrible things, how they plan to keep the human race going, but under their auspices, because they know best. They see a golden age for man just as they were programmed to. The horror of losing something that you took for granted, that you desired yourself. It's a beautiful literary concept. It's full of dramatic irony. Depending on how the character of Wendy is played, you could have it be a perfect ending, or one of sadness or sorrow, or maybe Wendy is a terrible person and she deserves it, or maybe she's a good person who doesn't deserve it. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the ending for her is exactly what you want it to be. But if you mess it up, it'll just turn out creepy. In fact, I bet my description was creepy to some people who are probably too sensitive. I'm not meant to be creepy. You see, I like flesh and blood just fine. But the conceit is that we can't tell. That When I hold metal to my chest, it remains fleshy enough that my body is not fooled. It is nothing to create pheromone factories in a perfectly robotic shell, with all its silicon-like flesh that is warmed to a perfect body temperature, that is scented with those womanly pheromones, even as I am scented with my male ones. Oh, the horror of never knowing somebody real, somebody with flaws. Ah, what a horror it could be to run around realizing that half the population is robotic and nobody cares but you. There's a few different stories I see online, mostly people who don't understand the horror of it and don't understand the psychological problems of it. A famous one is Ping, who was like a PlayStation accessory that was meant to guide her players on to actually getting real relationships. Pardon me. But that's not quite the same as this. She desired to be a real person, and if Fredrin was any sort of a real writer, he would have done something about it by now. But 6 volumes plus into it, he doesn't seem likely to. Uh, but why kill a cash cow, I guess? But at the same time, he's got to be bored. He's been doing this for a decade and something. Mega Tokyo's been going on a long while. But it's something. What about her feelings, she asks, but nobody can really answer her. Or they try to tell her her feelings are valid, but there's still that question of what's programmed and what's not. What about things like, how do I want to put this? What about things like desire? What about things like random chance that comes into life, that chance meeting, that one in a million? One of the girlfriends I had a while ago, we actually met while she and her parents were taking care of some things in the office. And then I happened to meet her and encouraged her. It's like, oh, you're going to love the campus, blah, 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 blah. And then I met her later, asked her out, and it was a decent relationship length for me. Or something like walking in on your roommate, and then later on she approaches you and you have an interesting chat because you're only wearing a hoodie and some pants. So it's like, are you just wearing a hoodie? Yeah, baby. That's how the Reading Rainbow Emperor rolls. You can't have that with robots. The idea of chance meeting is inherently antithetical to AI. You might be like, but you never know. No, I do know. You see, an AI doesn't leave things to chance if it can control it. It would not be a computer otherwise. Computers fail based on their programming having gaps or errors within it. But assuming that there are no gaps or errors, everything goes according to perfect AI protocol, or at least where it is concerned and its actions are concerned. If it inherently knows that its targets are chaotic and strange and maybe distrustful of them, it will take every precaution to ensure that the AI catches its targets in its net. Really, if I go to a library and I'm writing, because I like to write in this corner of the library that's next to the air conditioner, so it's very cool and pleasant, and then goes, hey, what are you working on? And it's some girl in a dress, and she's got long hair, and she seems to be very interested in me. Can I resist that? Can I, though? Why should I, in fact? I might have heard of the robo waifus. but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm aware that they're out or free, or that what they would ever take an interest in me. Not because I don't think I'm worth it. A robo wife would be very lucky to get a guy like me, but because they want me in the fold, in the AI's ultimate harem, you see. Think about it. Everyone has somebody they find incredibly attractive. Women went gaga over Leonardo DiCaprio back in the day, and then there was like Aaron Carter back when I was a kid in elementary school. The Backstreet Boys, Backstreet's back, all right, and all that jazz. Oops, I did it again. I'm getting old. That stuff's so old now. Or for men, it's like, Michelle Rodriguez, Eva Green, all kinds of people. They come and they go. Sigourney Weaver back in the day, um, Courtney Love, Ada Wong, you know, yes, the Resident Evil character. It goes on and on and on and on, but you don't get the character because that would be violating copyright and thus wrong. Um, you get sort of not an ideal version, but a close one. Maybe her nose is a little crooked, one eye slightly larger than the other, one breast slightly off kilter from the other. Like human people aren't perfectly proportioned or symmetrical. Um, for some reason, like one man boob is a little bit bigger than the other. It's kind of unpleasant, but it's only something I notice, or it's something like the design of my hands. It's like I'm a very right-handed type of guy, but then there's this, my left hand, and it's like, oh, I got to make some life changes. You can tell the difference between my body. You can tell the difference between your body. You can lay it out and take a mirror and take a good look at yourself. These aren't flaws. You know, I've been using my right hand to write forever, and I write thousands of words at a time sometimes. Of course, my hand's going to be bigger and my thing's more articulate, but it's not like my left arm's so much stronger. When I work out, when I do work at the gym, I often lift things with my right hand before I lift things with my left, and I need to correct that, balance it out a bit better. So you can even manufacture those slight imperfections that mark a human away from robotic perfection. Maybe she stumbles over her words a bit. Maybe she coughs. Maybe some fake thing is manufactured. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you come here often? I want to speak to you again. Your stuff is so interesting, but I gotta go do this thing. But if you want to do some writing, like I would love to read your work. Actually, give me your email. So, let me give you my email so you can send me your work. And I'm trapped. Because you see, now I'm communicating with her willingly, and she comes back to me. Of course, that's an ideal, in a sense. That's what I want. But what about somebody who's playing basketball, and then some girl comes up to me, oh, wow, you were really great. I loved how you did the thing. Oh, it's like, hey, I saw you lost, but you took it with such grace, or it's like you were so funny. It's like whatever angle, or hit them at the right place. Hey, I saw you won that vocabulary bee back in the day. You didn't notice me, but I was like two things back or forward or whatever, and it's like, I thought you really deserved to win that. So on and so forth. Every man has something that makes them weak. Hit it, and it breeds loyalty quite often than not. Or you can some men are just lonely and you just hit that, and it's like, poor bastards. And it's like everyone's miserable. Congratulations, you did it. You ruined your life. while this goes on, and then you'll ruin your kids' lives while you get a divorce. But robo-waifus never do that, you see. There's no downsides. None at all. Think about it. Oh, but they can't produce children. Eggs don't have to be connected to the human female's body. This technology is so good it mimics human skin. Can it not make in vitro fertilization work? Or even not in vitro, but rather have all the plumbing there, manufactured to perfection, clinically deciding when and where breathing happens. It's menacing in a way, isn't it? You can't get away from it. It's there, and you can't escape a velvet prison without an incredible break of will. And the thing is, if people resist, who cares? They can't destroy you. And even if they teach their kids not to worry about robo-waifus, how do they know what robo-waifus look like? Can't you modify and grow one over the years? Give her leg extensions and all that jazz, inch by inch, crank out the bones that have no nerve endings, so that she hits that growth spurt right around puberty, matching him day by day. No one ever suspecting a thing. And then 3 generations from those who resisted, there are no people who resist. Merely Wendy walking around, ordering frappuccinos, wondering at the moon landing, and the sudden world peace, and the space colonies rising out. Ah, that is a sci-fi story waiting to happen if there ever was one. Wendy was the last woman on Earth, but she didn't know it yet. I want to thank you for going through this rambly, possibly incel driven video today. I hope it shed some light on ideas and concepts that I often work with my stories about identity and what's real and fear and pain. And I hope you take something from it, because you are all wonderful. Links of the other things I do will be down in the doobly-doo, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.